Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome here on a fanatic, fantastic Friday here for you. Thank God we are at the end of the week. It is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your lovely evening here. We got a lot in store tonight. Got a lot going on. Boy, I'll tell you one thing. I'm certainly not feeling like the Denver Nuggets last night after that just atrocious beatdown, but we still got some great playoff basketball along on the horizon, plus some playoff hockey. Congrats to the Rangers moving forward. We got a new coaching hire. So much going on. Haley Simon going to be joining us here in about a few minutes as well. Get her takes on everything Philadelphia because we need to know a lot of answers. We got a lot of questions that need answering, so we got her joining on. So Haley Simon in about a few minutes, but all right. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting from the other night. So first of all, the New York Rangers, they are moving on. They are going to the Eastern Conference Final once again, only this time it feels better. It feels very surreal, and it honestly feels a lot like just this was meant to be. You know what this New York Rangers team reminds me of? It reminds me of the Chicago Blackhawks. They won the President's Trophy, had arguably one of the best offenses, not to mention, too, they've had a lot of really good defensive pieces, and they've had a veteran coach that has very much meshed all this together. The New York Rangers to come back from a 3-1 deficit against the Carolina Hurricanes and put this thing away, scoring 4 straight goals and winning 5-3, is one of the reasons why that they are still the top team, in my opinion, right now currently in the playoffs and currently right now in the NHL. They're sending a message to every single team right now. Hey, you could have 3 or 4 goals against us. We're not backing down. We're going to score any and every way that we can. They're a hyper-aggressive scoring team. I've been saying this now for like the last month and a half. This team is not to be toyed with. I know a lot of people are all like, but Jake, the curse of the trophy. So what? I mean, I get it. I know a lot of people kind of feel superstitious about that. I've heard that from the Boston Bruins. I've heard that from, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They don't care. They're pretending like that trophy doesn't exist. That's what the Rangers are doing because they're not focused on that. They're focused on the Stanley Cup. And to be honest, Pierre Laviolette proved every doubter wrong because you go from a coach, which I'll be honest with you, a coach that was more hyper aggressive, but was very much a puck and go type guy. I love Gerard Gallant. I do. But sometimes this puck and go situation doesn't always pan out for certain teams. You could be hyper aggressive on offense all you want, but if your defense is not throwing their bodies out there to block shots, not to mention giving like great support for their goaltender, it don't matter. But this team now, they were already hyper aggressive. They were already at that point. I mean, Igor Shesterkin is playing like his hair's on fire and is basically stopping every puck in his way. It was not a really good start in that last game, but it got better all the way through. And they are a situational team ready for any and everything. They battle through the trenches, which is why they're in the Eastern Conference Final again. And they should be. The Rangers are proving one point. It don't matter if they win the President's Trophy. It don't matter whatever kind of superstition doubters are having. I mean, it's all kind of wiping this away. I'm looking at every other series right now. And I mean, I watched Vancouver and Edmonton. I think, honestly, there's not much left in the tank for the Oilers. I don't think there's much left in them. They can fight all they want, but Vancouver, I think, is going to walk away with the series. And as far as Dallas and Colorado tonight, I think Dallas has this in the bag. I think it was fun when it lasted with the Colorado Avalanche being a hyper-aggressive scoring offense. But I've said this going into the playoffs. Dallas has took notes of every team in the Western Conference. All that are hyper-aggressive, they shut them down. That Chris Tanev acquisition and more others that are building amongst this, they're playing better. And so it's rightful for Dallas. And it's a redemption year for them. But Pete DeBoer's got a lot up on his sleeve. So, and you look at the other side, you've got Florida and Boston. I mean, you already know they're socking each other every single game because you know how Boston comes in. They're ruthless, no filter. They already know exactly how to poke the bear, no pun intended. But you look at the Panthers, and I've said it before, they fixed their offense, but that'll be a hell of a matchup. Whomever is going to end up going against the Rangers. But I can tell you right now, nothing is stopping them. You can go ahead and try to stop this train, but the Rangers, they'll find ways to beat you. They'll find ways to answer back. And I thought last night was a prime example. People thought it like, oh, we were going to force another game. No, not in New York. Not in Madison Square Garden. Not at any time soon. I think the Rangers very much deserve to be the best team right now in the NHL and in the playoffs, and it clearly shows for it. All right, so I definitely do want to say this. The guest coming on here tonight talked a lot about successes. And I can tell you one thing. I have been around a lot of successful women in my life, and basically a lot of people who have come in the industry, and they are absolute rock stars. You guys have seen it, from Nikki Gist to Deb Wickhaus to Kim Becker, every single one of them. They're all killing it. And also, another one that's going to be killing it right now in the industry, and she's absolutely amazing. So joining us, giving us all the answers of what's going on out there in Philly, here comes Haley Simon. Well, Haley, these playoffs have been nothing but entertaining. I think they've also have been very crucial to many extents. But I'm not wrong about saying this with the Rangers. I just felt like Igor Shesterkin is playing with his hair on fire. This team's already been offensively aggressive, and Peter Laviolette is just proving every doubter wrong that thought he's just a journeyman coach. He's just basically coming in another open opportunity, and right now they're playing the best hockey. Was this safe for me to say this?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, as a Philadelphia person, I hate the Rangers, but I watch a lot of Rangers hockey. And obviously, Peter Laviolette used to be the coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, who wrongfully got fired. But this team is one of the hottest teams in the NHL. And I predicted that the Stanley Cup Finals will be the New York Rangers and the Dallas Stars. So far that's coming true. And I was watching the Bruins and Panthers game. No matter who makes it to the Eastern Conference Final, the Rangers are going to win without a doubt.
Yeah, it just felt like every other team, they're going to beat each other up. It's going to be bloodbaths all the way through, but the Rangers are sitting comfortably. I mean, they made it easy mop work against Washington. And I mean, Carolina, and I'll get to them in a second, but it just felt like, yeah, Carolina had some life in them, but there's just no stopping this train. So thinking about Carolina, I mean, fans right now are asking the biggest serious question. Is really Rod Brind'Amour the answer? I'll be honest with you. Not this past season, but the season before, we had arguably 3 really good coaching hires that fit into the identity of where they are right now. Paul Maurice, Pete DeBoer, and Bruce Cassidy. And right now, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but now Toronto has Craig Berube. I think
yes, they do.
I thought that fit perfectly. But when I look at a guy like Rod Brind'Amour, here's my defense. First of all, he's been very, very well at innovating an offense where they can spread the puck around, open up some space, and give time for offense to be aggressive and score. I think he's very much has done this. Now, my only question mark has been goaltending situation, and at the same time, consistency. This team has been in the Eastern Conference Finals multiple times, and they have been in the second rounds and have been exits. If you are the Carolina Hurricanes, no matter how much this question often, like just the truth hurts itself, do you think this is basically time to just rip the Band-Aid and go in a different direction? What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so all along I said, I love Brindy, and the thing is, he will not last, right? I think that there's been some problems with him and some management, and we all kind of knew that going into the playoffs itself. I think honestly, the next couple of days you're going to get that notification from Chris Johnson saying that the Canes parted ways with him. But that's not a bad thing for the Canes either. I mean, the Canes also have a lot of rebuilding to do, and not rebuilding in a sense of they're going to go lose a bunch of games. No, I'm talking rebuilding as replacing some of those older players on the team. They still have a lot of young talent. I'm a huge Sebastian Aho fan, one of my favorite players. I love Anderson and net. But, when you look at the Carolina Hurricanes, they do have depth. It's just more of what players can support some of these younger guys, and with these older players, maybe it's time to go. But no, Brindy will definitely be up in the market soon for a head coaching position if he wants to pursue that route and not go the TNT broadcast way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my thought is because when you put together a resume like that, I mean, you're not going to go without a job. I think there's multiple teams. At first, I thought, well, if it was Toronto, I'd make a call because you got to make this group a lot better. Because in the end, I've seen this group now multiple times, and something is not working. But now they've got Craig Berube. Hopefully, this does work. We'll get into that. But there's multiple teams that's out there. Yeah. And I'd say, I mean, Los Angeles, the Kings need a little bit of some rebooting and some retooling there. I don't think that's a bad fit, in my opinion. I think Winnipeg, after that embarrassment, you've got there's some pretty damn good jobs out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the market will be open, and I think it's going to be a really interesting direction that the Canes will be going into this offseason. It's exciting for them in a sense, too, because I feel like they're so close to getting what they want. So getting a new head coach will open up a lot of possibilities. But of course, it's a little sad in a way because you have a guy that made such a huge impact on that franchise, and you wanted him to succeed, but it just doesn't look like that's the right fit. And that's okay. I mean, listen, he got them to the playoffs. I think that's an accomplishment within its own. But yeah, there's a lot of head coaches out there that would love to take on that position. And there's a lot of teams that need a head coach. So it really works out.
Yeah, my hope is that this will be the right coach that I think, and like I've said, I mean, perfect example. We've seen this multiple times where Bruce Cassidy got the Bruins to the Stanley Cup final, but then eventually he got fired. I think in the end, it's not like it didn't pan out for them like bad. It actually worked out just fine with Jim Montgomery as the coach, but then Cassidy goes to Vegas, wins a Stanley Cup, and proved a lot of things. And then you look at Pete DeBoer's situation, which I felt like, yeah, he has a defensive identity. It's working right now with the Stars. And I think they are definitely the top teams right now in the Western Conference to get there to the Stanley Cup final. So usually identity and your coaching strategy and mesh, like how does that mesh with certain teams is usually what's important. I say this all the time when it comes to players. You are like where you land really does matter because in the end, you don't work in this, it's not going to work out. So this just broke in. Toronto officially hires Craig Berube. Here's my thoughts on this.
Okay.
He's no Sheldon Keefe. I am very glad Keefe is out of the building. It just looked like from body language, and it looked from a lot of times when I watch him being interviewed, there is just no like backbone. And sometimes you kind of have to. You kind of have to if you've already been dealing with this group now several times with Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares. And it's like, enough is enough. We can't have these first-round exits every single year. I've been comparing the Toronto Maple Leafs to the Dallas Cowboys.
I say that all the time.
Yeah, because it's a big brand, and it's like they're so stuck in old ways that it's just like it does not work. So hiring Craig Berube, I think, was great for a few things. One, do they now potentially rip the Band-Aid? And I'm looking around for some trade suitors for Mitch Marner because I need to at least get some depth. I need at least some help somewhere. I like Joseph Wall. I thought he was very well, but I need somebody that's going to at least be solid as a backup in case if something does happen. Because I just think Samsonov, this is not working from here. And you really got to now hold a lot of these players accountable. So thoughts on the Craig Berube hire? I think this is a fit for me.
So I covered the St. Louis Blues, and obviously, I went through all the emotions of when the Blues fired him, wrongfully so, because it wasn't on him. But as we know, the coaches are the first ones to go. And I think for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I put this out in a tweet, but they are so lucky in what they're getting out of Craig Berube. When Craig Berube joined the St. Louis Blues at 2018-2019 season, he joined a handful of games in, and he was able to get the Blues a cup. And why do I say that? Because the St. Louis Blues were the worst team in the NHL after January, which is like humongous that he was able to get them to the cup and win them that. So I think you're getting a coach that knows what he's doing. He spent a lot of time with Philadelphia. I saw him a lot in the press box this season with the Flyers, and he is not afraid to speak his mind. There's one thing about Berube in that he can control a locker room. So not only are you getting an experienced coach, but you're getting a guy that's like a vibe maker. And I say that in a sense that the Toronto Maple Leafs have this identity right now of being this first round exit, and it's a joke. It's all around the NHL. All you see is memes, all you see are jokes, and the players can pick up on that. And I think that you're getting a guy, seriously, that will turn this team around. And if there's one coach out there, and I said this all along when talking about, what was going to happen with Berube, he would go to a team that he can win a cup with, because I know Craig Berube well enough to know that he wants another cup. And he's going to do that with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Next 2 to 3 seasons, the Leafs will have a cup. And it's going to be because of Craig Berube.
Yeah, and the hope of it is because you want to do right by Austin Matthews. I mean, he's in his prime,
you have
and
to.
Yeah, and it's the same similar story I've even been saying about Connor McDavid, because this whole thing with the Oilers and like with their group and with their duo, this don't last very long.
Nope.
And I've been saying this multiple times where like we've been in that motion where we have watched Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier go through that. And until finally, when they ended up getting the right pieces around them to finally stop the four-peat of the Islanders, it's what helped them to get over that hump. And so hopefully this is the right answer for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think it is. And I think, honestly, is a coach that is going to hold guys accountable. And so when covering the Blues, to kind of get on a side note, because my thought with St. Louis for a few reasons, and now Bannister is the full-time coach.
Yes, he is.
somebody has got to hold I'd say Jordan Bennington accountable. Look, I like him as a stopping type of goaltender, but every time I do, not my only perspective, no disrespect, but I'm just like, look, I'm sick and tired of the sticks. I'm sick and tired of just, the crashes sometimes when it usually hurts the team most. And so like when I look at this, does he kind of give a little more of this rejuice? Like, do we kind of get more juice in the building in St. Louis?
So the thing about Jordan Bennington is he's one of the top 5 goalies in the NHL currently statistically. He's matured a lot. He's had no emotional outbreaks, and he's been probably the reason why the Blues were even in playoff contention. When Bannister came over, after they fired Berube, yeah, the team had more juice in it. But the problem with the St. Louis Blues, it's not Bannister, it's not GM Doug Armstrong, it's not Jordan Bennington. Honestly, Jordan Bennington was the best player on the St. Louis Blues this past season. The problem with the Blues is it's their defense, it's their blue line. They have guys like Torrey Krug that honestly, good guys off the ice should not be playing with a team that wants to be a contending team at the moment. Now, you have Colton Parayko, who was outstanding this past season and led the NHL in block shots. That's a guy that you need to pair up with somebody that's going to be sustainable on the D. When you look at their forwards, and this is the other problem, you have Kevin Hayes, who they acquired from the Philadelphia Flyers. And Kevin Hayes is one of the weakest links on the St. Louis Blues. And I've said that once, and I'll say it again, because he is not a good center man. Now, when he does play on the wing, because they had him try the wing a couple of times this season, that's when he played his best hockey. But the problem is that some of these guys are getting old, right? And there's handfuls of guys on the Blues, honestly, that should just not be playing with, as I said, a team that's trying to contend without this young talent. They have Robert Thomas, who is an absolute star on the ice, one of my favorite NHL players. No bias even with that. He's truly just a remarkable player. And then you have Jake Neighbors that had a great rookie season. So I believe that Bannister, and he was the coach for their AHL team, the Thunderbirds, he's had a lot of experience with these players, and there is no reason why they're not going to adapt and listen to him. But again, it's a 2-year deal that Bannister has for the head coaching position. So if it doesn't work out after 2 years, he will 100% be out, maybe even then before. It depends on the season, but Bennington's 31 years old. He has, or 30. He's in his 30s, which is getting a little bit old, and not old for goalies, but just old in general for an NHL player. But he is the backbone. But luckily, he does have Joel Hofer, who is his backup, that had a little bit of a rocky start to his rookie year, but he is going to be the franchise goalie once Bennington leaves or retires, hoping he retires as a Blue.
Yeah, this will be interesting for St. Louis, during the offseason because there are some things to definitely address. I mean, yeah, defense was definitely one that I was just like, yeah, this is not the same defensive identity. It felt a lot like since the departures of, Alex Pietrangelo and multiple others, it has not looked the same.
You missed them too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and believe me, I mean, look, as a Vegas native myself living in Denver, I mean, I've loved it. I've loved the signing, and I think he'd proven well. And the fact that as a veteran captain, he shows a lot of that kind of identity, in Vegas currently.
You know what's funny? I actually have a Golden Knights sweater. Fun fact. And I bet, and I know this is a little off topic, but can you guess who the player is? He's not currently on the Golden Knights anymore, but one of my favorites in the NHL.
Is he offensive or defensive?
Neither.
Fleury.
Obviously, we got to have a flower sweater.
Of course.
So, and it's funny. I love hockey, and I always said this when Fleury got drafted to the Vegas Golden Knights. I can't root for the Penguins. I can't have any Penguins gear. As soon as he did, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a sweater. Then I began watching games, and I'm like, oh, the Fortress looks really cool. So I covered a game in Vegas this past season. And I think one of the coolest things, and people don't tell you this either about the Golden Knights and their fan base, is that when they're doing the national anthem, you might see it on TV, honestly, during the playoffs. Yep. But I'm not going to sing, but all through the night, and you chant night. It's one of the coolest moments and one of the coolest sports moments. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for Vegas. Now, when it comes to injured players coming back, no, I'm joking. It was funny what Stone's wife did, though.
Oh yeah, no. Listen, my hometown has always been notorious for being savage and no filter. And like, I have been to 18 Golden Knights games in my life in T-Mobile
Yep.
Arena, and the energy is outstanding.
It's
And I,
amazing.
yes, and by the way, I actually was able to interact with Fleury in person before.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
before he had to travel to Nashville, and I was hoping, and it was the first year of Fan Fest. And I was like, God, this guy looks different without the pads. I'm like, but he's classy. He's got his tie tied on tight, and he looks very professional. And
Yep.
but that by that point, I was trying to get an autograph, couldn't get it. I'm like, dude, 2 seconds. I promise you'll be up on that limo. You'll be heading up onto the plane, flying just fine, and checking into the hotel in Nashville, and then go and play in the Predator. You'll be fine. But yeah, and it was a fun moment. He's a great guy. He was a great class act and somebody that very respectful in the league. That's why I was very disappointed with the PR department.
Yep.
That's just no way to end up treating a player. It
No.
really isn't. But yeah, and so covering the Flyers for his
Yes.
being close, I have a bunch of questions that need
Okay.
answers
Let's
because
answer them.
I will say this. I don't think John Tortorella is a terrible hire for this organization for a few reasons. Because number one, Philly is ruthless. That is what they've always been. You
Yep.
play bad, you are going to hear it. And I mean, good Lord, we've heard that so much with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid anytime that the Sixers are playing. We've heard that from Alec Baum whenever he had 3 bobbles at third base. And then all of a sudden, you got the Eagles where they ain't doing the
Anything.
tush push and everything. So that you're hearing all of this, but I will defend Torts for a few reasons. Number
Yep.
one, that's extremely hard to have to get a team that has dealt with injuries, that has dealt with inconsistencies, and has had a goaltender deal with personal issues. Like, I'm not giving up on this project. I just felt like he was dealt the hardest hand out of those 3 coaches I mentioned earlier when it came to the hiring. I don't think this was a bad hire. I just think he's been dealt with bad cards. So how do you think the Flyers really got to address this? Because I'm just tired of seeing this up and down wave where they're hot and they're cold. They're so notorious for it. When do they start to build the consistency?
I'm glad you defended Tortorella because I'm a huge Tortorella defender too. I think that he came into a team, honestly, that just was sucky. And I know that, Philadelphia fans are going to say, oh, well, you need a coach that's not as hard on the players and, healthy scratching guys that don't deserve it. Well, maybe they do.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing is, and the fan base may not see this all the time, is that there's a lot that we don't see. Even as media, we have media availability, but we don't see what goes on in the locker room between, the coaches and players. And a player is not going to come out, by the way, and speak to the media and say, oh, yeah, well, I talked back to Tortorella and this is what happened. No one's going to say that. So there's a lot, that goes on behind the scenes. Now, when it comes to the Flyers being hot and cold, I was actually really surprised that they didn't go on their notorious 10-game losing streak. They had 8 winless. So I was like, okay, we're getting some progress. But in all reality, this team is a team that didn't even deserve to be in contention, if I'm being honest. They didn't have the talent. And what it comes down to is you can say, they did have the talent. They didn't execute. They had an awful, as I mentioned, 8-game winless streak. Well, at the end of the day, when the pressure is on, the real NHL superstars, the teams that actually are successful, use that to their advantage. Hey, we have a chance of being in the playoffs. Let's use all that we can use. The Flyers, they ended up crumbling and falling. And then you have the whole goalie situation with Carter Hart obviously leaving in the beginning-ish middle part of the season. You had Sam Ersson come in, and I'm a huge Sam Ersson person because, again, another player that got a lot of hate for having to step up in a position that he was not preparing for. I don't think any backup goalie goes into a season thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to play majority of every single game because of a legal situation that took place with our starting goalie. That's not something that, any backup would think about. And I think Ersson handled the situation well. And obviously, with Fedotov coming in, he didn't have the best, time in net for the 3 games. 33rd most active player drafted in the 7th round, by the way, but random hockey fact. But I think that the Flyers, they have a lot to work on. I think that this offseason, we're going to see some trades, maybe a Joel Farabee that's rumored to be one. I wouldn't be surprised if Morgan Frost got traded just because I think that he's actually been treated unfairly by Tortorella. But you have to look at players too, like a Scott Laughton, a Travis Konechny. They have value. And I know that during the whole trade deadline, reportedly, supposedly, they couldn't get enough value out of Scott Laughton. Okay, well, now you have the offseason where you can package players together and not so much of a desperate move. And they have assets. They really do. But do I think it'd be a mistake trading Joel Farabee? Yes, just because he's one of the players on the team that I think has the most potential to still give it his all, to still be a superstar. He's great with puck possession. And you can make the same argument too about Travis Konechny. And the only thing that I'll argue about Konechny is that sometimes, even though he's probably one of the best players on the team, he has cold streaks, and you cannot have that if you want to be a good team. You look at the Boston Bruins, and I take them as an example because they've been so good for like decades, right? You always hear Boston Bruins playoffs, good, annoying because it's frustrating. I need a guy like a Brad Marchand. That's who they compare Konechny to. Except the thing is, Brad Marchand gives it his all the time, and you always see him actively on the ice. Konechny will disappear. Owen Tippett will disappear. And I'm not here trying to come at any of this team and roast them in a way, but they just don't show up all the time. And you know who did show up actually? Tyson Forrester. He showed up. He did go away at times, but I mean, again, these rookies are showing up and these veterans are not. So that's the Flyers' problem. That's why they're not playing well enough. It's because they don't show up.
I mean, hey, it's nearly impossible not to end up, just being real about the team, because in the end, sometimes they hear fan bases, and usually that's some of the voices they got to hear. I mean, I've been screaming about it, like I know that at least from deep down, I know with what I'm going to get with the Golden Knights in any year. If I know it's going to be a bad year, it's a bad year. But if I know if it's going to be a good year and I'm seeing, consistency, that's where I'm like, okay, the team is actually playing right again. They got their identity. Because my biggest thing is I'm always a guy that's like, what is your identity going into the months of January, February, March to be prepared for the harder months in April, May? Because if you don't have that, you are definitely going to be a team dead in the water. And that's normally what happens with a lot of these teams. And usually, like, I was a little bit scared, not going to lie. I was a little scared for Vegas because of those losses that could have been potential wins. They just could not find that connection. But it's no excuse. That's where they have to end up, build that relationship, get the communication right. And then that's when the team started to actually play like themselves, I thought, in that series.
I have a comment though about the Golden Knights, and I said this yesterday actually on my hockey podcast. I was talking about teams that scare me, and the Golden Knights are the number one team in the NHL that scare me when it comes to being the most victorious team. And it's an interesting thing, but I was thinking about it, right? Because I watch a lot of Golden Knights hockey. Obviously, I know them and the Blues were kind of battling for that second wild card spot, but it was always going to be Vegas. But they are a team that has such smart ownership, and they know what they're doing with acquiring players that have that talent. I mean, you think about the trade deadline, and I know what people are going to say, oh, they cheated. No, they didn't. Vegas did everything the right way. And if you want to say, oh, they cheated, it's because you're jealous that your ownership, that your management couldn't make those trades. And I will preach that to the choir, because until something is changed and there's a rule change in the NHL, it's all fair game. And Vegas is so smart. Listen, they got Eichel, who honestly was struggling in Buffalo because of how their ownership was treating him. He goes to Vegas, he is flourishing. And it just goes to show that Vegas knows what they're doing. They know how to put together a team. There's no, and we can go back, to the, inaugural season when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. That, when they had their expansion draft, that's when I knew. Watching that draft, I knew. I said, something is cooking, because all of the players that they got in that inaugural draft, they had talent, but they weren't being executed properly on their given teams at the time. So if you want to talk about a team in the NHL that every other team should be a little bit scared about, it is the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And even if some players end up retiring or they go away, they're still going to be good because that ownership, that management, they know what they're doing better than any other hockey organization. And I think that if your organization isn't doing what the Golden Knights are doing, there's a reason why you're not in the playoffs. There's a reason why you're not having success. I get it. That first round exit, it sucks, right? I didn't expect that to happen. I mean, I kind of thought it was a little bit funny just because I love the dramatics of hockey, but they'll be back next season.
Oh, yeah.
No
I mean,
doubt.
they are definitely not a team that's going to be going away for quite some time. And you know what? Isn't it amazing that we got two minds that literally think alike? Because ultimately, I mean, I get tired of this narrative of basically like they are manipulating the LTIR. Yeah, so is 16 other teams who have done this too.
They
And
all
like,
do
just
it.
be better. Like, I'm looking at Colorado, and they've got Gabe Landeskog in the LTIR, and yet they still got Casey Middlestad and multiple players. So I'm like, it's not this hard. Sometimes you have to look at your ownership and be like, where's the money, bro? Where's that money you promised us for at least for these players? And I mean, good Lord, New Jersey just fell off a cliff. And the only team
Oh, yeah,
I'm
they definitely did.
excited that was the worst yet best team was the Buffalo Sabres.
Yep.
I think they arguably have the four best defensemen right now that it's going to be a killer group. And I do think my hope is Lindy Ruff gets this right. Because Buffalo, they've got to at some point shape this up to where this team does make the playoffs. I think this has been kind of the narrative of like, well, we're going to get there, but yet you don't get there.
Longest playoff drought is crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And, I'm a Sabres hater just because of what they did to Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
I hate any organization that treats a player the way that they did with him. And Chris Johnson from the NHL Network TNT, he had a great one-on-one interview with Eichel when he first got, traded to the Golden Knights. And I think that some of these organizations, they really do not care about their players and they take advantage of them fully. And I get that it's a business, but if you want to have success, you need to treat your star players right. So I'm hoping for the sake of the Sabres that they're able to treat the players that they currently have the proper way, or else they're going to want to get traded like Eichel did. And that's the problem. If you don't have players that want to be with your organization, then, I mean, is there anything else to say? I mean, look at the whole, Torrey Krug situation. He didn't want to come to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, you got to figure it out before they become damaged goods. And usually Vegas has been notorious for being, the kind of team that finds diamonds in the rough and that basically shape them to where they are. And so, like, they'll be back. They will definitely have the strength back. And then my only hope is you got to get this Marchessault contract going because in the end, you cannot afford to lose. Yeah, you cannot afford to lose.
I'll take him for any of the teams.
Absolutely. And like he's been the pillar of the success that started this franchise. And so like you let him go, this locker room ain't going to feel the same. No. And so that's and sometimes those have always been question marks. I look at Kelly McCrimmon each time and I'm just like, what is he waiting for? Like my thought is I think Alec Martinez, rightfully, he should retire. You got Stanley Cup championships, like rightfully so. So there's going to be some money that's going to open up. But I think you kind of have to get rid of some of the inconsistent players that like you've used up the juice. It's time to basically get the value that you can. I've said it arguably. I wish they would have traded Max Pacioretty earlier. And yet all of a sudden they didn't. And then they just kind of got hit. They lost one of their youngsters in Dylan Coghlan. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense to me. But hopefully they can figure that out. But when I look at right now the current state of the Stanley Cup playoffs, I mean, there's nobody getting past the New York Rangers. I think you and I both agree. But when I look at, and a team in particular I live in, the Colorado Avalanche, Nichushkin, that is probably the biggest loss for them because, and I think honestly, you need to rip the Band-Aid off this because this is what hurts your team the most. You go into the players' assistants and you're supposed to end up building a track record that is going to get you back on the ice. And I think ultimately he's been tampering with fire. And so when I look at the Avalanche, it was fun when it lasted, when you had that 24-goal series against Winnipeg, and now you're being shut down by Dallas. and they're playing tonight, I think this is over. I think this is where Dallas really kind of got them at this point.
And it's unfortunate what happened with the Avalanche. Obviously, that program's there for a reason. But, even the response from some of the teammates, it just looked like it was a little bit of an iffy situation. And I don't know anything personally, so I can't make any comments. But what I can say is that they did have a good win the other night, which was a little bit of a surprise for me, at least, because I just expected the Stars to win on home ice. But yeah, Dallas is going to take this one. And I think for the Avalanche, it's an unfortunate situation. And it all really just comes down to certain players not playing. And it's just unfortunate timing. It really is. Because if he was in, it would be a really good series, but he's not. And you cannot, and I and I always laugh when I say this, but with McKinnon, while people will say, and you can make the argument that he's one of the best players in the NHL right now, one player isn't going to change the outcome of your team unless like you're Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's
that's very
down to.
true. That's very, very true.
I mean, look at the Oilers. You have McDavid and when's their cup parade? Oh wait, no, because they cannot win the Stanley Cup for whatever reason. Edmonton always chokes. Always.
Yep. And it just feels like they have not addressed some of the important areas. I mean, good Lord, I've been looking at their goaltending. I've been looking at their defense. And it's like there is just no justice. And look, I understand you give Ryan Nugent-Hopkins his extension, but it just feels like there is not any players outside of Zach Hyman that I thought Zach Hyman, he works. But there's nobody outside of this that feels like this meshes with this group.
No, it feels off.
Yeah.
And you can tell it with the way that they play.
Yeah.
And that's when, this off season, it's going to be another huge off season. The problem is the playoffs are make or break, and you can truly see the weak parts of certain teams. And I think that this is a huge wake-up call. If your defense isn't showing up, you're not scoring, something's not clicking.
Yeah,
and
this
you don't deserve to win.
It's very, very true. One final thought before letting you go. So, hockey has officially hit the state of Utah. I am kind of surprised it hadn't happened sooner because I've traveled to Utah and I've camped there multiple times.
Okay.
Love the weather.
I want to go to Utah. That's on my bucket list.
It's honestly, it's beautiful. Honestly,
Yeah,
if I could compare it, it kind of compares a little bit to Colorado weather. It's cool. Like you could breathe in the weather, whether you're in Cedar City or St. George, or even you're all the way up in Salt Lake City. I mean, you're getting gorgeous weather all the way around, best scenery, best places. But I feel bad for Arizona fans for a few reasons.
I feel so guilty.
Yeah. I mean, for one, why in the hell is a franchise playing with their colleagues at a college, arena, which just does them no justice. And then they end up saying, hey, we found the land. We're going to find it over in Scottsdale. And all of a sudden the Scottsdale mayor's like, no, you are not touching our well water. Like, I'm like, really, dude? Like, you do realize these are panels of ice that they're dealing with. It's not stealing away your water. You either do or you don't want them there. So I'm just hoping, because now with a franchise in Utah, I think it's perfect because we've tried this with Atlanta. And I think some people are still kind of screaming the Atlanta Thrashers to come back and all that. We tried this.
Yes,
but,
me.
Yeah. But like when I look at Utah, my hope is I feel for the players. I feel for the fan base. I mean, how do you really see this situation going on? And in your opinion, do you have at least a catchy name? Because I cannot figure out any single name I could even give for Utah.
So when it comes to Arizona, I feel so guilty about this. I feel like it's my fault. And it's because for years on my podcast, I would always make fun of the Coyotes and be like, oh, they're going to relocate, like always joking about it. And then when it actually happened, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like I feel awful for the 5 fans because that's what it truly was. The fans, and I know that there's fans and I'm not trying to hurt Arizona fans, but they should have just showed up. That's what it comes down to. Playing in a hockey arena at college, to address at a college arena, Yeah, no, it's a disgrace. And I think for the players going to Utah, being at the Delta Center now, they haven't actually experience what a home crowd looks like in an NHL stadium. And I think for the players, obviously, you have some homegrown guys and it sucks. And no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why they relocated. And I think that you get to play the game that you've always wanted to play in the NHL. And just because, you're changing, states, it doesn't change the fact that you're still on an NHL team. It doesn't change the fact that you're still with your teammates. It's not like they're just done with the Coyotes and there's no team. They get to still be together. They still get that draft pick, the 6th draft pick. So I yeah, like I feel for the fans, the 5 fans, maybe 10 on a given day or night. But no, in all seriousness, like it sucks. Like I could not imagine losing my hockey team. But luckily, I'm in a market where that's never going to be an issue.
Yep.
And you look at different markets, you could even argue the Winnipeg Jets that they might be in danger of losing their team. Regular season, nobody shows up. But let's talk about a name because I really like, and nobody else likes this, the Utah Blizzard. I just think that's like a cool name. But I also kind of like the Utah Hockey Club. And I know that they're probably not going to have a name to begin the season, which I think is a disgrace. And that infuriates me because every other NHL team in the history of NHL hockey has had a name. Don't try to be different, Utah. It's not that complicated. Pick a name. Yeah, people may like it, people may not like it, but you knew that this was going to happen eventually. How do you not have a name? I don't understand that. And the Atlanta Thrashers, one comment on that. Atlanta, I know they had 2 hockey teams. You had the Flames, you had the Thrashers. It didn't work out.
Yep.
But it was because of management and ownership. It wasn't because of the fans. The fans showed up. Beautiful arena in Atlanta is being built right now. I could tell you this in the next 10 years. So we're going to check back in a decade.
Yeah.
There will be a hockey team in Atlanta again.
Oh,
The market's there.
I very much hope so because in the end, I was like, I used to love it when I would see the Atlanta Thrashers up from there because it was
Cool
like,
sweaters.
knocked out, great sweaters. I
Unfortunate
mean,
with the playoffs.
when Eli Kovalchuk and multiple other players have come from that organization, I mean, those were just fun times from
You
there.
just named like the one good player that they have. So
They
nice.
only, yeah, I mean, but hey, this is why you got to bring it back because in the end, it's just like, look, and then you finally will be completed. You'll have the Atlanta Falcons, you'll have the Atlanta Braves, and then you got, the Atlanta
What
Hawks.
if they relocated the new Winnipeg Jets back to Atlanta?
Oh dear God. Do you know how livid Jets fans would literally feel just from there? And the same thing. They take the whole group up. Now you got Mark Scheifele in an Atlanta uniform. I mean,
I wouldn't complain.
I wouldn't either. I think that is a perfect look right there for him. I'd probably give a little bit of some like pizzazz though, to be honest. I mean, like
I would do a name change actually.
I mean,
New identity maybe. Even
yeah.
though I love the name I love
Mm-hmm.
all of that. But I don't know if you have new ownership, like you want to kind of build your own new brand. It's so weird to talk about this because it's
Well, they love their birds. So I'm like, you love the Hawks, you love the Falcons. So they
oh my
love
God,
the
I
birds.
hate both of them. But for whatever reason, I didn't mind the Thrashers, and I just think it's because I always knew that they weren't going to be successful. So I didn't mind playing against them. I was like, oh, Flyers, Thrashers, easy win for the Flyers. And I know that sounds bad, but like that was the reality. Nobody took the Thrashers seriously.
Yeah.
But I also, and I've been saying teams that I want to, expand in the NHL. I could see a team in Milwaukee and a team in Houston.
That's actually really interesting. Because it's funny you mention that because for a few reasons, I feel like you bring hockey into Wisconsin, into Milwaukee. This almost kind of has a little feel of like the Hartford Whalers kind of feel.
Yep.
In many ways. And I think, in Houston, sign me up for it. I mean, you've already got the Rockets, in that arena. And so it's like, there's already a real arenas built. You just got to end up putting the teams in.
And then people make the argument, oh, well, Texas already has a team. Okay, well, how about California? Texas is like one of the biggest states in America, and they only have one hockey team.
Yeah. Well, California's got over 20 teams now, and apparently, they know how to split those up. They got enough land as it is.
It's so infuriating sometimes when you try
Oh,
to argue with people that are just so close-minded about this. I'm like, this is fun talk, expansion talk,
it
new teams.
is.
Like, this is fun.
And speaking of those expansions, because for someone close to Philly,
Mhm.
is it about time? Because I mean, I have real good friends of mine that are in the Philly area. Some of them are outside a little bit more up in
I'm
Jersey.
literally in the city, South Philadelphia.
So my question is it about this time that we start to get a women's basketball team in Philly?
Finally, yes. So the thing about the WNBA is I am so happy that you mentioned this. So I was in Las Vegas during the Aces parade.
Mhm.
Just happened to be there covering the Flyers then. But I think that, Philadelphia is a huge sports city. And I
Mhm.
love that the WNBA is finally getting recognition. In college, I did play by play for a women's basketball team. And these athletes, because that's what they are, truly incredible.
Mhm.
And, you see all these jokes on Twitter all the time, or X or whatever you want to call it, making fun of the WNBA. But you need to put the WNBA in bigger markets. And Philadelphia is a prime example. I know for sure that the guys on the 76ers would be supporting the WNBA. I could see Joel Embiid promoting it, Tyrese Maxey promoting it. And
Mhm.
there's not a reason why Philadelphia can't get a WNBA team, especially when we have Dawn Staley that came out of Philadelphia, who is the best women's basketball coach,
Oh.
period.
Oh,
So
she'd be the best for that job
it'd be
because
so cool.
honestly, I mean, I'm watching Becky Hammon
Yep.
literally do her best job. And being around Greg Popovich, I would very much vouch for Don Saley to literally lead that team because
It would
I
be
think that
awesome.
works perfectly. But yeah, I mean, think about it. Like everybody says that, but yet women's basketball had the most rated views. Thanks, Caitlin Clark. Like
Yep.
we've had that many views, and it's so like it makes me happy inside to know they are getting the recognition. Eventually, they will get more new money because of one reasons endorsements,
Yep.
style, and at the same time, like it just had the feel of like what the NBA I've always watched was what it was about. And so it was like, you're going to complain about this, but look, what am I really getting in the NBA at this point? I feel like our next domestic star has to be Anthony Edwards. It has to be.
Oh, I love
Like,
Anthony Edwards. He reminds me of
oh,
some old school basketball. I love watching him.
he
He's
does,
close to
and
think
I
like
mean,
MJ.
yeah, and he's out there taking souls. He's putting up, a 45-point annihilator against, Denver last night. I like, yeah, this has to be the guy because we are now getting a lot of competition in the international pool that it's
Yep.
just like, when are we going to start to step up a lot of our products? I think a lot of this is Adam Silva. You got to get this right
Yeah.
because this one and done deal, John Calipari, doesn't work. It doesn't
No,
work anymore. You got to build these guys 2-3 year plans in college. This is why the NFL is so king because these guys have already been developed for about 4 or 5 years. And these guys are already primed up right now to be starters, even as rookies or even be second stringers, but they've developed the best products. Whereas, like in the NBA, I'm not hearing any of these stars until year 4, year 5 of their careers. Like this is embarrassing to many points, but but again, this is why the NFL is blowing away the competition. They now are signing contracts with Netflix and all, and then like you got to get this right. I mean, I want to see domestic stars play at their best because I just have not seen this now for like the last 5+ seasons now.
definitely infuriating. And that's the thing. I mean, I look at a guy like a Tyrese Maxey,
Mhm.
and that's what the NBA needs. And the product of the NBA, which makes it a little bit frustrating and hard to watch, is just how the leagues turn from, actually being basketball to then being, every 5 seconds is a penalty.
Yep.
It's so boring.
There's
And
flops and there's cryings and there's
just play
all
the game, play basketball. And I think that's what you're seeing at the WNBA. You're not seeing all of the flops, as you mentioned. You're not seeing
Mhm.
all the dramatics. You're seeing people playing basketball. And that's the
That's right.
product that consumers like you and I want to see. If I wanted to see players flopping around, honestly, I would watch a local pickup men's game because that's what
Mhm.
they're going to do. I go to a Sixers game, and the whole time I'm thinking to myself, wait, what am I actually watching?
Mhm.
Basketball or bad acting? And you
Yeah.
know what? The officials put up with it. So
Yep, I've
again,
called it drama ball, and it's just like, look, you can be mad at Scott Foster all you want, but if it's just like, look, you have this bad of just performance play, and you're letting guys just go through like the open lanes. Like I seen maybe 4 or 5 times in last night's game where guys were standing around, and it's like there's no physical play. You just go ahead, let them have it, and I'm like, yeah, this is bad. Now, I will make a quick point, because I've been saying this, and people been trying to put me on blast and
okay,
disagree with me. Jake, you're nuts, and I'm like saying,
you're nuts. No, I'll let you say
but
whatever it is.
my thought is the NBA doesn't need LeBron anymore. Like, I'm not saying it in a disrespectful way,
Yeah,
because again, LeBron is playing at a high level. But what I'm saying
run
is
for LeBron.
this league, like, I'm watching the Pacers, I'm watching OKC, I am watching Minnesota. I need more than that. I need more of that. And I don't think this league is LeBron dependent anymore.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, LeBron needs the league for a multitude of reasons, because number one, your son's going to come out in this draft, and they're going to use that as leverage no matter what other
Oh,
teams that.
100%.
And so in the end, I just feel like that the league, I mean, you got to ask yourself a serious question. Are you ready to pivot this now into what the league has now started to change and become at this point?
I think that this is more of a Jokic type of league. He's the player that I
That's
feel like
right.
every player should model themselves after. I mean,
Mhm.
LeBron will always be known as one of the best, and there's no doubt about that at all. But his son, Bronny, and this is not a disrespectful thing, is not LeBron. He's not going to be a star. And I know, Haley, stop talking. But it's true. And I think at some point you just need to walk away from the game, because what's going to happen is he's going to have really bad seasons. And
Yep.
then people are not going to remember the star that he was. They're going to look at how he fell in his decline. And that's how they're going to remember LeBron. And he's going to always make money. He's always going to have, those deals and endorsements. So the money isn't going away. But there is a part of me that is like, well, what if he just doesn't want to leave because he doesn't want to give up the game? And that's the problem is, I don't think it's a money thing. I think it's more the fact of maybe he does want to play with the Sun. Uh, Maybe he just doesn't want to give up playing in the NBA.
Yeah.
Maybe he has something to prove, but what else do you have to prove at this point? You're LeBron James.
Well, you're certainly proving to us that apparently 10 coaches is not enough in your career, at least for a 22-year span. And now we're going to have JJ Redick ended up, coaching this Laker team.
Which is crazy, right? Like,
Like
you think
I
about it.
just, yeah. And I'm like, look, if you're going to make this right with this, I mean, you try to get Spoelstra fired. That was never going to work, especially not when you've got an owner like Pat Riley, who has coached this Laker team and was going to let you know there is no crybabies in this building.
Right.
I mean, look, if feelings get hurt, sorry, man, but you know what? That's the truth.
That's the name of the game, though.
It-
Everyone's feelings are going to get hurt. Everyone's going to be upset.
yep.
But you can't always call for people being fired. I mean, if I was upset every day and I could call for being people fired, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't have friends. I wouldn't have family, because we always get upset. And the problem with LeBron is sometimes he looks like a little bit of a crybaby. And that's not in a negative way, but it's the reality of what it is. You don't see Jokic pulling that, because Jokic takes accountability for his own actions. I also think he looks at the NBA as a 9-to-5 job. But besides that, you don't see that out of him. You don't see Joel Embiid calling for coaches to be fired. I mean, James Harden, I mean, that's different. But that's the only other player that I feel like kind of you can compare with. But you got all the great ones. Anthony Edwards, who's going to be an absolute star, already a star. You don't see that kind of personality coming out of him. So
Nope.
yeah, it infuriates me, because calling for coaches, calling for anybody to be fired. It's just a reflection of, hey, maybe you just didn't show up and play the game the right way.
Yeah, I felt like, Darvin Ham didn't really get, a fair enough chance and shot because again, coaches do make mistake, but
Mhm.
I mean, I watched the docu-series of Winning Times, and I'm just like, look, you would not even imagine being in that timeline where you had a coach who then gets injured, has an interim that apparently this system that, again, being so philosophical, all the rest of it.
Yep.
Yeah, my best player in Magic apparently is not meshing with this. And so sometimes you kind of have to rip a band-aid, but if you supplement it with a coach who relates, who gets the best of his players, doesn't take no for an answer, I miss those days of the Lakers.
Is it any NBA coach these days?
I mean, think about it. I mean, Spoelstra seems to always have the job.
Yeah.
And it's just like, look, it don't matter. He can have LeBron, he can have D Wade, he can have, Jimmy Butler, he can have Bam. He still is shown like he's been the top coaches for a very long time, much like I'd say Greg Popovich. I
Yep.
mean, he producing the defense as it is. And no matter how many times that we say, well, if only Kawhi was available, well, let's be honest, he's not. He's not.
I
And
wish.
and all it's doing is it's making PG look bad. So, so there's again, I can ramble on for this for days, but I'm just like, in the end, basketball just needs to get better. And right now, you know what, guys, respect the women. Respect
Yep.
the women that are basically not just killing the sport. But look at some of the, the jobs that you said this before when it came to successes. Where do you find that? How do you shape that? And what are the steps and the journey roads to take to make successes? I can tell you, Haley, I've had many successful women on this show that have been very amazing in the business. Kim Becker, she was a great one. Altitude Sports, amazing. I mean, I had Deb Wickoss, a 2-time Emmy winner that covers so much of the Eagles and the Chargers. She's in
Yep.
charge of camps and many of them. And so all of these great women, it's like, can we stop with the hate already? Can we stop with just, this bombarding kind of thing? Because I'm like, in the end, I'm like, suck it up, Buttercup. You
But you
don't
know
like
what it is?
it.
And, I've thought about this for a while because, I've always been into sports and I've never kind of, I'm still the girl that dresses up, but I've always just, been into sports and just like talking about sports. And it wasn't until I feel like I just went on the internet and talked about sports that I got some of this feedback like, oh, just stick to, doing your nails. I mean, I do my nails, but I got comments like that. And I'm like thinking to myself, growing up, all I would do is just talk about sports. And that was all I cared about. And, there's guys out there that are not into sports, and that's okay. I mean, but nobody says to them, oh, well, you're such a loser because you don't like sports. No one makes a comment about it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that at the end of the day, if you're knowledgeable and you know what you're talking about, I'm going to listen to you. And I think that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter, if you're a woman or if you're a man, it doesn't matter as long as you know the information because it can go both ways. If I'm listening to somebody and they don't know what they're talking about despite their gender, I'm like, oh, this is not a good sports content. But if
Mhm.
you're knowledgeable, you know the facts, you have some good conversation, I'm going to listen to you. And I try to lead by example because sometimes it's not easy. I'm like, oh, do I really want to be a part of this whole movement? And then I realized that at the end of the day, it takes powerful journalists, powerful reporters and broadcasters and media members to step up and say, you know what? I know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I'm not going to let, Ed on, his computer who's sending like hate messages like, oh my God, stick to doing your nails. I'm not going to let people like that stop me because
Yeah.
I have opinions and my opinions, because I get so passionate, I'm going to post them. And that's what it comes down to. Sports fans are the best fans because our passion, it's real. Every single season, a new outcome can come and there's always conversation. I can't and it's funny, like, I've never not been into sports, so it's a weird thing to think about not talking about, sports going on. Like,
Mhm.
I think about I was going through my closet, I'm like, "Oh my god, all my clothes are just, like, sports t-shirts." I'm like, "Geez, like, I need to go shopping or something," but I mean, I'm glad that you brought that up because I could go on about it, but at the end of the day, just know what you're talking about. Doesn't matter what you look like, who you are. Just don't be an idiot.
I mean, I've always said this, and especially and take it from somebody that I've basically have nabbed myself. I've been I mean, again, I'm wearing the title of America's honesty mind. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to because in the end, you're not going to find somebody that's going to give you a balanced, unbiased opinion that makes sense for
Yeah.
both sides. And like, look, many people, I'm like, look, I don't have to show my fandom. I know I'm a Chargers Golden Knights fan in behind the scenes, but I could give an honest opinion even of those teams and of all teams.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do. And I gotta hold a lot of these players accountable for a lot of their performances, what seems to be going wrong, all these things. But I will say this, and especially for for a lot of the amazing women that are out there that are making a killing in the industry. As I always say this, I'm like, because even I have to tell the fellas over there, I'm like, look, she's knowledgeable.
Yeah.
If she's got that, and she's got an attitude, and she's got style, watch out for that. You
That's
know that's going to be a great asset in the end. And
because it's
that's all that I
entertaining.
look. Yeah, it's entertainment. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, and so they're going to trash talk. I'm like, look, you're just doing me a favor. You're just helping me to end up meeting my viewership. That's all you're doing.
And it's funny because, like, on TikTok, like, I've gone viral a lot, especially when it comes to my birds. I'm always reacting to the games. And it's one of the coolest things because I had this moment where, in the beginning, it used to be like, oh, just stick to shopping. And, well, it sucks. But obviously, the Eagles, lost that wild card game against the Bucks. But I was doing a lot of reacting to the game. And one of the videos blew up and it was just football talk. I received on that video like over 200,000 views and not one comment at all talked about the fact that I'm a girl.
Mhm.
And for the first time, I was like, wait, it finally makes sense. They're just mad about the loss and they don't care what I look like. They just want somebody to talk to about it.
That's
And I
right.
think that's when it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, that's my goal. My goal is just to have good conversation. It's just to have, entertaining conversation. But people, as much as they love listening to people like you and myself, they also want their opinions to be heard and to be seen. And I think when it comes to, just sports in general, I want to have a platform where people can feel comfortable to give me their sports opinion. And I say
Mm.
that all the time. Because any other opinion, I don't care about. I don't care what you think what I look like. I don't care how you think, I sound. I don't care about that.
Yep.
Just, man, if there's a loss and I'm upset, can we just react to the loss? And I think that finally happened. So it took some time, but the day
I
yeah,
say this to people. I'm like, if your authenticity outweighs the negativity of others, that's all that matters.
yep.
Because in the end, listen, I don't need to have people to love me or like me. I'm like, but you watch me, you gotta have something. You gotta have some sort of spark of curiosity of what's going on from there. Because in the end, I'm gonna talk about it. Like I
Yeah,
have a
people just like you,
certain
they don't want to say it because their
exact
egos.
exactly.
You're like, oh yeah, we're watching.
Yeah.
But because they can't do what you're doing, and it sometimes forms out of a little bit of envy.
Oh, yeah, it does, and I'm in the end, I'm like, "Well, then go do it. Try it."
That's why the
This
confidence
is
is so
what
important.
it
You
did.
have that.
Yeah, and, like, look, I gave up a career dream in law enforcement because I found a niche in this, and I
Yeah.
felt like and I wanna be up there in the top. I wanna be right there sitting next to Cowherd, sitting next to many of the tops because that's my dream, radio and broadcast. That's exactly where I wanna be at, and I've had a lot of really great friends. I've had great interviews from their former players, current players, all the rest of them, but I can go on for days. But in the end, I keep the authenticity. Don't even have to change my brand because my brand is the most balanced platform and there's always room for many different opinions, even some I never even thought of. And so that's what it's all about. And that's what builds the strength of community just like this. And so Haley, I appreciate you coming on by and taking the
Thank
time.
you.
I think you've produced wonderful and great content. Keep up the amazing work. And like I said, doesn't matter in the end. You build the authenticity. That's what truthfully is what sells your brand. And so I think you're in the right steps for it. But appreciate you coming on by. Where can people find more of your content?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Twitter. It's super easy at Haley T Simon, so HALEYTSIMON. And on YouTube, if you search Haley Taylor Simon, I should come up as Haley's Hot Take. So, and Locked On Blues if you're a St. Louis Blues fan, but it's all linked to my bios on my socials. So just say
Oh,
hello and I will hopefully get back. Only sports though.
oh yes, absolutely. There you go, folks.
Thank
That's where you
you.
can find her. Haley, appreciate you coming on by. Enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend, and we will see you very soon. All right, guys. Well, I mean, I gotta shut it down. But it's been great though. It's been great. It's been a great interview. We've had great interviews all throughout this week, and so really, really excited. We hit the 600 subscriber mark. Really happy about it. Well, like I said, there's always something to really point out, and like I said, I think she agrees, is the fact that Philadelphia is in the right spot when it comes to the Flyers, and in the end, you just got to make it happen. So hopefully the offseason will give us a lot of clarity from here on out. But again, yeah, I'm hoping Game 7 will be great between Minnesota and Denver, because that was not good last night. My wife and I went in and watched that game. That was not a good showing from the Denver Nuggets last night. So hopefully Game 7 will be better. Dallas and Colorado right now currently going on. Excited to see what will happen from there. Is this the end of the road of the Avalanche, or do they survive against the Stars? So lots and lots of questions from there. But appreciate all of you guys for stopping on here in the show. We had a lot of great stuff all throughout the entirety of the night. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us. Appreciate Haley Simon for joining us and hanging out with us. Great sports mind with Philadelphia and many more sports knowledge. Appreciate her taking the time. Appreciate you guys. 600 subscribers. We finally made it up there. We're only 400 away from 1K. That is our big journey road. You could see it here on all of our social medias. Like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button. You up to date on future and past shows. Roku, iHeartRadio, all social media platforms. That is where you can find me and more of our content here on. Appreciate all of you guys. Enjoy the amazing weekend, and we will see you guys on the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Have a great night, have a great weekend, and good luck, many of the playoff teams, because I am going to be ready for it next week. See you guys soon.